Welcome to The Explainer. You've probably heard the term corporate social responsibility, or CSR, thrown around a lot. But what does it actually mean? Today, we're going to get beyond the buzzword and figure out what it means for the companies in our lives and for all of us.
All right, let's kick things off with a pretty fundamental question. For a really long time, the answer to this was simple. Yep, that's it. But today, well, things have gotten way more complicated.
So when most of us hear CSR, what comes to mind? Probably a big corporation cutting a giant check for a good cause, right? And yeah, that's the common take, that CSR is just charity. It's something a company does on the side, after the real business of making a profit is done.
And look, this idea of giving back is for sure part of it. This definition from the Philippines really captures that feeling, but, and this is a big but, that's only scratching the surface. The true story of CSR goes a whole lot deeper.
Okay, so to really unpack this, we got to get our definition straight. Let's break down what we're actually talking about with CSR and its very close relative, business ethics.
Right. Here's the more, let's say, official definition. The two most important words here: continuing commitment. This tells you it's not about just writing a check once a year. Nope, it's about weaving social accountability right into the fabric of the business model.
And working hand in hand with CSR is business ethics. This is all about the moral compass of a company, the principles that guide its choices. You can think of it as the how, the rule book for what's right and what's wrong in the day-to-day.
Now, what's interesting is that for ages, these two concepts were totally separate. Business ethics, that was considered a personal thing, up to each manager and their own conscience. And CSR, that was just an optional extra for the company, kind of like a bonus it could give out if it felt like it.
This split wasn't random, though. It was born from a huge debate, a real philosophical clash over what a business is even for.
In one corner, you've got the old-school, traditional view, profit above all else. The famous economist Milton Friedman was the biggest voice for this. He argued, pretty bluntly, that a business's only social responsibility is making money for its shareholders. End of story. But in the other corner, a newer, more modern view has taken hold. This one says a business has a duty to all of its stakeholders, and that means everyone from the employees and customers to the entire community.
And this modern idea, it's not just some feel-good sentiment. It's actually backed by some really powerful theories that have totally shaken up that old profit is king model. Let's dig into a couple of the most important ones. First, there's something called the triple bottom line. The idea here is that you can't just measure a company's success by how much money it makes. You've also got to look at its social impact, the people part, and its environmental impact, the planet part. The theory says that to be truly sustainable in the long run, a business has to be healthy across all three.
And then you've got stakeholder theory. This one takes direct aim at the idea that only the shareholders matter. It says, hold on a second. Anyone with a stake in what the company does, we're talking employees, customers, suppliers, even the local community, they all deserve a seat at the table. Their interests have to be part of the decision-making process. So you might be wondering, what caused this huge shift? How did we go from profit is the only thing that matters to talking about stakeholders and the planet? Well, it wasn't one thing. It was a whole wave of pressure from society that forced businesses to start singing a different tune. It was really a perfect storm, Non-governmental organizations, NGOs, started getting way more influential. The internet and new media made it impossible for companies to hide their dirty laundry. You had these massive, high-profile scandals, like Enron, that just shattered public trust. And on top of all that, a new wave of investors, shoppers, and employees started saying, hey, we expect better.
All of that pressure basically ripped up and rewrote the old, unwritten social contract between companies and the rest of us. It's kind of like a deal, right? Society lets businesses exist and operate, and in return, we expect them to be a positive force. It's a quid pro quo, a two-way street.
And this is the really critical point. The perspective shifted from seeing a business as just a piece of private property for its owners to seeing it as a social institution that exists within the public sphere. And that's not just a minor tweak in language. That's a fundamental change in the rules of the game. This really illustrates how much the pyramid has been flipped on its head. In this new way of thinking, responsibility flows from the outside in. It starts with a duty to the natural environment and society as a whole. Then come the other stakeholders, and only after all that do you get to the shareholders. It's a complete 180 from the old way of doing things.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about theory, but how does all this stuff come together in the real world? How does it become a practical framework that a company can actually follow?
Well, it all gets bundled under a bigger umbrella term, corporate responsibility. This modern framework is built on 3 pillars that are all linked together. You have CSR, which you've been talking about. Then there's corporate governance. That's all about running the company in an ethical, transparent way. And finally, environmental accountability. They're not separate, they're all part of the same whole.
And just to show you this isn't all just talk and theory, let's look at a really powerful, concrete example. In India, they've actually taken this idea and written it into law. It's not voluntary anymore, it's a requirement.
Check this out. Under their Companies Act of 2013, large companies in India are legally required to spend a minimum of 2% of their average net profits on CSR activities. It's not an option, it's the law.
And they're not just told to spend the money anywhere, the law gets very specific about what counts. It has to be put into projects that help society. We're talking education, fighting poverty and hunger, promoting gender equality, protecting the environment, things like that. This literally transforms CSR from a nice-to-have into a core, legally mandated part of doing business.
So what's the big takeaway from all this? The bottom line is that our whole idea of what makes a responsible business has evolved. It's no longer enough for a company to just be a private engine for profit. Now it's seen as a social institution that has a real accountability to everyone. And that changes everything for us, as customers, as employees, as citizens. It changes what we can, and frankly, what we should demand from the companies that are such a big part of our lives.
And that kind of leaves us with one final thought to chew on. In this new landscape, where the expectation is for companies to serve people and the planet, not just their own profits, what does a truly responsible company actually look like to you? It's a huge question, and the answer is going to keep shaping the world we live in.